Om Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we had finished verse number 4, I think, right?
Yes.
And so we talked about karma in the last 2 classes, and we talked about the various sadhanas necessary, and what is karma yoga we had talked about, and we had talked about meditation, quite a few things, various types of manasika karma, all those things. Okay, so now we will chant verse number 5. So let's have a look. So please unmute yourself. Jagat Ishadhi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Brad Deva Pujanam. Okay, so look at the words. Jagat Sevanam Isha Yuktaha. So Isha is the Lord, Ishvara. Yuktaha means you are recognizing the Lord as the Lord. Yukta literally means to be connected to. So Isha Yuktaha, connected to the Lord, recognizing Ishvara, as the Karma Paladata, the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of the world. What should you do? Jagat Sevanam. Jagat Sevanam means service of the Lord. Now, also he says, Ishadhi is Ishadhi Yuktaha. So, Dhi is the intellect, and therefore you can read this as Ishadhi Yuktaha, means understanding that Ishvara, Ishaha, is there everywhere. So, service of the law of the world, Jagat Sevanam, service of the world, doing service to the world. How? By seeing the Lord as everything and everywhere. Ishadhi Yuktaha. So that this kind of a service, he says, it is Deva Pujanam only. It is the worship of the Lord only. Ramana Maharshi is saying that you don't have to do puja sitting in the puja room. If you are serving the world, the only caveat is that you are seeing the world itself as Ishvara. That is Deva Pujanam. It is the worship of the Lord. And here he says Ashtamurti Brahat. As Ashtamurti means the Lord with 8 forms. Ashta is 8, Murti is form. Ashtamurti Brahat, the Lord with 8 forms. So having the idea, having the notion that the Lord is the world, and I am seeing, when I am serving the world, I am serving the Lord alone, that itself is pujaha. So here, pujaha is, that is to say, the ritualistic puja is being taken as one of the means of victory over the mind. And here, Deva Pujanam, right? And we saw in the last few classes, puja is which karma? Kaika or mental or verbal?
Kayak.
So puja is bodily karma, kaika karma. So he is showing that kaika karma, physical use of the body to do puja, that itself is the Deva Pujanam. And why is the physical use over here? Because your service to the world, it may be anything. It may be in terms of serving the poor. It may be in terms of going and setting up orphanages. It may be in terms of feeding the hungry. All this is service to the world. And that all requires the use of your hands, and body, sense organs, everything. And therefore, Kayaka Puja. This puja is involving the use of the body. So when we talk about Kayika Puja, that is to say, puja involving the use of the body, it can be divided into 2. There are 2 clear ways of doing it. One is the normal way in most in which most of us do it. What is that? You go to the puja room at a fixed time. You have your Krishna statue, or you have your Shivalingam, or you have the Salagramam for the Vishnu, for Vishnu. You have your own fixed routine, and you have your own form to worship. So your individual form, which we call Ishta Devata. So that the speciality of this Ekarupa Puja, it is called puja of one form. So that one form is your Ishta Devata, your preferred form of the Lord. And that usually is done at a fixed time in the day, at the fixed place, which is either your puja room or it can be the temple also. So that is Ishta Devata Pujanam. That is also puja. And the second form is Vishwarupa Ishvara Puja. That is to see the world itself as Ishvara. In the first one, what are you seeing? You are seeing your individual form of the Lord. It can be Krishna, it can be Shiva, it can be Devi, it can be anybody, it can be Ganesha. That is because that form is familiar to us. We are attached to that form. And therefore I keep that form in my puja room. Or maybe it's a Krishna statue in the temple. So I go to the temple at the same time every day. Same place, same time. So fixed place and fixed time is the specific attribute of Ishta Devata Puja. Right? And it is single form. What is the attribute of the Vishwarupa Puja? First of all, there is no Ishta Devata. So the whole world is visualized as Devata. I use my intellect, I use the teaching which I have got from Vedanta to view the entire world as Ishvara. And advantage is what? That I am in contact with the world all the time. If I have to be in contact with my Ishta Devata, I need to go to the fixed place, the temple or to my puja room. And therefore there is a fixed time. But if I have managed to convert my devotion to Ishta Devata, the single form, into worship of the world as the form of the Lord, as the universe as the form of the Lord, that is Vishwarupa Ishvara. And this Vishwarupa Ishvara is available to me all the time because I am in the world all the time. And therefore, how do I then do the worship? By converting all my actions into a form of puja or worship, right? So this, we must remember that worship, this spiritual journey consists of 3 steps in terms of the different forms of the Lord. So normally, if you you can take it as 4 steps. If the earlier step is the non-devotee, supposing you are a non-devotee, so there is no puja involved, nothing involved. You are a very worldly person. You don't recognize Ishvara at all. So that is the first step. So we exclude that because we are saying spiritual journey. And therefore, in the spiritual journey, which most of us start with, we have our own individual form. So that is called Ekarupa Ishvaraha. Ekarupa means with one form. So it can be, as I said, it can be Krishna, it can be Shiva, it can be Devi, it can be Ganesha, it can be Kali. Any form which you like, it can take, right? So that is the first stepping stone of Ishvara worship or spirituality. Then what happens? I worship my form. Let us say it is Shiva. So I worship my Shivalingam for several years or maybe several decades sometimes. And for some people, it may be several lifetimes also, right? Worship of Ishvara, what does it do? It gives me Chitta Shuddhi. So as my mind begins to improve, begins to refine, I recognize that just as I worship my Ishta Devata, which is Lord Shiva, I recognize that my neighbor may be worshipping Vishnu. Somebody else in my family may be a devotee of Ganesha or of Devi, right? And earlier on, I used to think that my Lord is better than that Lord, because Lord Shiva is whom I worship, and he is superior to, let us say, Ganesha, whom somebody else worships. As my mind refines, then I realize that the amount of devotion that my neighbor has or my family member has to his Ishtadevata is just as much as mine. And therefore, I begin to recognize that Ishvara can be in more than one form. It need not be Lord Shiva alone. That same Ishvara is Ganesha also. That same Ishvara is Lord Vishnu also. And in that recognition, what happens is my mind is refined. And slowly, that individual form of Shiva, then Krishna and Vishnu and Ganesha, that extends. That my mind is widened. My mind is got a larger scope to function in. And then I realized that, ultimately every form of which I see is a form of the Lord only. If I am seeing a goat, that also is powered by consciousness. If I am seeing a tiger or a dog or a cat, all that is a creation of the Lord only. And therefore my mind begins to accept that, okay, everything that I see in this world, that is part of the Lord only. And when that refinement, when that thinking matures, when that mind matures more, then I put them all together and realize that whatever people or things there are in this world, all that necessarily has to be the part of the Lord. So, in other words, all that necessarily has to be the body of the Lord. And therefore, from Ekarupa Ishvara, my devotion has taken me one step higher, where I can recognize Vishwarupa Ishvara. The whole world is nothing but the body of Ishvara. Remember here, Ekarupa Ishvara, there is Ishvara and there is I. So there is duality, there is Dvaitam. Vishwarupa Ishvara may be a higher step. In fact, that jump from Ekarupa Ishvara to Vishwarupa Ishvara is a huge jump for a spiritual seeker. But even after that jump, Vishwarupa Ishvara is Ishvara and I am the sadhaka. There is still duality. Right? Then from there, when you mature more, from Aneka Rupa Ishvara, that is Vishwarupa Ishvara is Aneka Rupa Ishvara. Ishvara with multiple forms is called Vishwarupa Ishvara. So from that Aneka Rupa Ishvara, then I have to take the final step to Arupa Ishvara, the Lord without form. So right now we are not discussing that. I just wanted to give you a background of what is Ekarupa Ishvara, the Lord with one form, and what is Aneka Rupa Ishvara. And here Bhagavan Maharishi is talking about what? About Aneka Rupa Ishvara. Because it's Vishwarupa Ishvara only. And he has said that it is Ashtamurti Vritti of 8 forms. And in this kind of worshipping Vishwarupa Ishvara, I have to convert all my activities into worship. I cannot have selected activities only. As long as it is Ekarupa Ishvara, my activity is selected, my time is selected, right? Because I go to sit in the puja room, and then when I'm sitting in the puja room, I do my work. I do the chanting, or I give the flowers, or the oblations. So that is all fixed activity at fixed time. But when I move into the higher stage of Vishwarupa Ishvara, the Lord with multiple forms, then because I am face to face with the world all the time, what does it mean? I am face to face with Vishwarupa Ishvara all the time. There is nowhere I can go where Vishwarupa Ishvara is not there. And therefore, whatever activity I am doing, whether it be the first one of brushing my teeth, or having my dinner, or going to office, or watching TV, or talking to my friends, every activity is in the presence of this Vishwarupa Ishvara. And therefore, each of these activities, which was earlier a secular activity, the Lord was not involved. So most of us will be wondering, how can brushing the teeth be sacred activity? So earlier on, brushing the teeth was secular activity. It did not have the Lord involved. But now that activity is also sacred. That also becomes part of my worship. Why? Because only when I am aware of the fact all the time that whatever I am facing is Ishvara only, then only I can convert each one of my activities to worship. The attitude should be that the whole world is the body of the Lord. And in the 12th chapter of the Gita, Krishna talks about this. So many of you have done the 12th chapter, many have not. Those who have done will remember. Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. Krishna says in the 12th chapter, he says, keeping me as the primary goal and sarvani karmani mai sanyasya, dedicating all your actions to me. That is the key word. When you keep me, Vishwarupa Ishvara, as the primary goal, you are worshipping Vishwarupa Ishvara, and therefore sarvani karmani sanyasya. You have to dedicate all your actions to me. You can't say this action is secular and this is sacred. And in that manner, dhyayanta tu upasate, meditating upon me. How? Ananyena yogena, with undivided attention. That is the worship of Vishwarupa Ishvara, which Krishna himself has outlined in chapter 12. And again, in chapter 12 itself, he says, Tesham aham samudhartha mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha maya veshita chetasam. Same thing. He says, Mai aveshita chetasam, for those people whose minds are fixed upon me. What will happen? Aham bhavami nachirat. I shall very soon become. Aham bhavami. I shall become nachirat. Without any delay. What will I become? Samudharta. Samudharta is the savior, the rescuer. Rescuer from what? Mrityu samsara sagarat. From the ocean of samsara. Which is, in other words, mrityuhu, which is the ocean where you die and then born again. So, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, that ocean of samsara, I am the rescuer. Okay. Very, very important words. Dedicating all actions to me, meditating upon me with undivided attention. And therefore, all the actions of the day, without any exception, every single action should be an offering to the Lord. Then only can I view the world as Vishwarupa Ishvara. And Ramana Maharshi refers to this Vishwarupa Ishvara by another name. So in this verse he says Ashtamurti Ishvara. Ashtamurti means 8 forms. And there are 8 facets of this Lord, 8 parts of this Lord. So 5 of them you're already familiar with. 5 Pancha Mahabhutas. All the 5 elements are there. Akasha, Vayuhu, Agni, Jalam, Prithvi. These are 5 facets of the Lord. Then, next one is the sun. The 6th one is sun. The 7th one is moon. And the 8th one is Jiva. So this is the breakup of the 8. Ashtamurti. 5 Pancha Mahabhutas. Surya, the sun. Chandra, the moon. And Jiva, the living beings. Now you may wonder, what is the difference between the sun and the moon? So it's very simple. The sun represents all those heavenly bodies which have their own light. So in short, the sun represents all the stars having their own fire burning within them. Right? The sun is self-effulgent. Similarly, there are stars which are self-effulgent. Basically, all the suns in the galaxy. And the moon represents those planets which are satellite planets, which don't have their own light, but they borrow it from the sun. For example, what we call moonlight really doesn't belong to the moon. It is the sunlight reflected of the moon. And similarly, across the thousands of planetary satellites which you see, all those luminary bodies which you see in the sky, some of them are suns, many of them are planets not having their, or satellite planets not having their own fire. So sun and moon represents them all. So in between sun and moon, every luminous body in the sky is covered. There are 5 Panchabhutas and 1 Jiva, living being. So this is the facet of the universe. Now if you put them all together, 5 Panchabhutas, sun, moon and Jiva, you will find that it represents everything in the universe. Sun and moon represent all the heavenly bodies. Actually, Panchabhutas are also part of this Ananda moon. But anyway, just for the sake of explanation, we are saying Panchamahabhutas separate. So for Panchamahabhutas, we are taking it as in on the earth, right? So representing the various inanimate bodies, representing, and then Jiva, representing the conscious beings. So Panchamahabhutas here can be taken as inert matter because Panchamahabhutas are inert. And the Jiva represents the reflection of the consciousness on the Panchamahabhutas. So OC, RC is there, both of them are there, sun is there, moon is there. And to this Lord, so if you put them all together, as I said, it represents the entire universe. And the entire universe has to be construed, has to be viewed by us as the body of the Vishwarupa Ishvara. And we have to offer all our actions to the Lord. And then the question comes, when I am offering my action to the Lord, do I expect a consequence? Do I expect karma phalam? Yes, of course. You don't do any karma without having an expectation. But the key is that karma is done with Ishvara, Arpana Bhavana. The karma phalam is received with Ishvara, Prasada Buddhi. So these two keywords, Ishvara, Arpana Bhavana, and Ishvara, Prasada Buddhi, are the objectives of karma. What is the advantage of having this attitude? They will strengthen our mind so that the mind is not unnecessarily disturbed by adverse circumstances. So here you will note that Ramana Maharishi is recommending a shift from the worship of the single Lord, single form of the Lord. He is recommending that people who are doing Ekarupa Ishvara Puja should shift to Anekarupa Ishvara or Vishwarupa Ishvara. So puja of Ekarupa Ishvara, as I said, is a very limited facet because it recognizes that only that form of your Lord is the Lord for you. Only your Ishta Devata is the Lord for you. And the problem with that is that if I am attached to the form of my Lord, then I might begin to look down upon the Ishta Devatas of the other people. And here, by the use of this term, Ekarupa Ishvara to Vishwarupa Ishvara or Anekarupa Ishvara, Ashtamurti Braj in short, Maharishi is pointing out that the Lord is all-pervading. And if you remember, Arjuna expressed that view where in chapter 11. So he says, Aneka Bahu Dharavaktra Netram Pashyami Tvam Sarvato Nantarupam Nantam na Madhyam na Punastavadim Pashyami Vishveshwara Vishwarupaha. That Vishveshwara Vishwarupaha is given in that 11th chapter of the Gita, where he says, I am seeing. He is seeing what all is, he is telling what all he is seeing. He says, Aneka Bahu, many, thousands of hands are there. Aneka Udaram, thousands of stomachs are there. Aneka Vaktram, many mouths are there. Aneka Netram, many eyes are there. Ultimately, what does it mean? Everything and everybody in the universe is part of this Ishvara's body. When I say millions of hands I see, you have to understand as all these hands, they belong to Ishvara only. When I say millions of stomachs I see, Udaram, we understand what? All these stomachs are that of Ishvara only. When I see millions of Vaktram mouths and millions of Netram eyes, what does it mean? All the eyes in the world belong to Ishvara. All the mouths in the world belong to Ishvara. And if you put them individually, ultimately you are saying what? All the bodies in the world, they belong to Ishvara. They are part of Ishvara body only. So everything and everybody in the universe is a part of Ishvara's body. And therefore he says, Pashyami Tvam Sarvataha Anantarupam. I see your infinite form everywhere. Nantam na madhyam na tava adim pashyami. I cannot see the beginning or the middle or the end. Everything that I see is Ishvara alone. And in that chapter, which Maharishi has condensed into this one single verse, Krishna wanted us to understand that everything is Ishvara alone, including you and me. There is nothing in the world, inanimate or animate, which is not Ishvara. And the advantage of this is that this kind of an understanding takes us beyond petty negative emotions. And in the long run, it will bestow us with Chitta Shuddhi. With this, Ramana Maharshi's discussion on puja is over. And from the next verse, he will start discussion on japa. Okay. So before we go, this is a very important verse. Any question?
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, in Aneka Rupa Ishvara, which format is it? Out of the triangle?
You are very much in triangle format. You are there, Ishvara is there. very much in triangular format.
Sir, I thought it was Jiva and I am the Jiva and every other thing in the world is I see as Ishvara.
Correct. But
So
Ishvara
there is
is,
no
you
Jagat.
see as Ishvara, but you recognize that the world is there, right? So the world itself is Ishvara, but who is the creator? Ishvara is the creator. And therefore, you, as long as you say, I am a Jiva, you are in the format of triangle, triangular format. If you are going to be a binary format, you are Ishvara.
Yes.
And then there is Jagat. So the catch here is to recognize that I am Ishvara and the world is there. But also, when you say there is binary format, we are not saying there is duality. We are saying that is Advaitam. The binary format, in spite of using the word binary, we are saying it is non-dual. How?
Because one is Paramarthika Satyam.
One is Paramarthika Satyam. One is Vyavaharika Satyam.
One is Vyavaharika Satyam.
One is Satyam, one is Mithya. The Mithya Vastu cannot be counted. It is like I have a, I had a dream last night where I had $1 million in my account. No, I can't use those $1 million today, in my waking time. So in my dream, it was very real. But in the waking period, that $1 million, which was very real for me, is no longer present. And therefore, you have to say that ultimately, I'm still broke. So that same thing. If the world is Ishvara, but the world is Mithya. It's like saying, you go to a gold shop and then you find one chain and there's one bangle and there's one necklace and there's one nose ring and there's one toe ring. And we'll say, oh, 5 different ornaments. But if you're the goldsmith, you will say it's all gold, madam. For the gold, he's a gold Advaitin. He sees only gold. For us, we see different rings, we do different ornaments. The understanding that there is no ornament apart from the gold, that makes it Advaita. The understanding that there is no world apart from Ishvara makes it Advaitam. Therefore, you are Ishvara there. Once you are Ishvara, then you know that I am there and the world is there. And where is the Jiva in this equation? In the binary format, where is the Jiva?
The Jiva has identified, the Jiva, Ishvara Aikyam has been established in the binary format.
Yes. So the Ishvara, as Ishvara, you know that other Jivas are there, but they are part of Jagat. They are part of the world. So for you, you are there. You don't say Jivas in the world. You say world is there. Because the world consists of all Mithya things and Jiva is also Mithya. And since you and the world are not different, therefore there is Advaita. That is what we call the binary format.
Okay, thank you, sir. I will listen to the recording again.
Okay. All right. Now, let us look at verse number 6. So please unmute yourself and we'll chant. Uttamastavad Uchamandataha Chittajam Japa Dhyanamuttamam
Uttamam.
Okay. All right. Now, Uchchaha Mandataha. So you have to break up those words. First is Uttama Stavat. So Stava is Stuti, that is the worship of the Lord. Uttama Stavat. So he says of all the types of chanting. He's talking about the chanting part over here. Okay, Stuti. Of all the type of chanting, Uttamaha, the best. And there is Uchcha Mandataha. Right? The chanting Uchcha Mandataha, singing or chanting in a loud and lower volume. So there are two ways you can chant. You can chant very loudly so that you can disturb all the neighbors, or you can chant in a not too high a volume so that you hear and the Lord hears, but nobody else is disturbed. So this is Uttama. Singing or chanting in a loud or low volume is Uttamaha, is greater, is superior to what is greater or superior. You have to word it in the other way. Okay, like that. What I am saying later will come first. So Chittajam Japa Dhyanam Uttamam. So he's saying that first there is a chanting of the Paramatma's name. It can be singing or chanting in loud and low volumes. So that is greater. That is superior thing to do. It's a good thing to do. Better than puja. You have to connect this first line, Uttamastava Kuchamandataha, to the earlier verses where we talked about puja, which is Kaika Karma. And here it is Vachika Karma. You're talking about verbal activity. So when he says Uttamaha, the word Uttamaha, better than or superior to, is connected to the previous verse, which is puja, which is bodily action. So what he's saying is that verbal action is better than bodily action. So that connection has to be made, otherwise you'll get confused over here. So Paramatma chanting, Uchcha and Uchcha is loud voice, Mandataha is medium or low voice. The verbal chanting of the name of the Lord, either in a high volume or a low volume, it is Uttama, it is superior to puja, Kayika Karma. That connection has to be made. That's the first line. Then Chittajam Japa, chanting in your mind. Chitta is mind. So chanting in the mind, which is also called Dhyanam, also called meditation, Uttamam. The second Uttamam is to be connected to the first line. He's saying that chanting in the mind or meditation is superior to loudly chanting the name. That is what he's saying is Dhyanam, meditation, is superior to Japa, which is superior to puja. That is the net meaning of this. A little complicated way of putting it because the connection is not very easily visible. Right. So ultimate meaning is that of all the things that we have said so far, puja is the bodily action. Verbal action, that is japa, is superior to puja, and mental action, that is meditation or upasana, it is superior to japa also. That is what is being said. So here, japa means basically the repetition of a mantra or the repetition of a Lord's name. So you can simply say Hari, 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 that is also japa. There are a lot of people in India who say Ram, 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 that is also japa. Then there are people who actually chant the Gayatri Mantra or the Aditya Hridayam, or some people chant the whole Bhagavad Gita itself. All these are japa. But it is repetition is the point. So there is a difference between what we call japa and what we call parayanam. I hope that is clear, okay? When you say Gita Parayanam, you are going to start from chapter 1 or start from Dhyana Slokas and take it all the way to the end of the Gita. So that is Parayanam. There is no repetition there. When you are saying Japa, you are repeating again and again. So Japa usually short mantra, right? And japa is of three types. So one is ucha japa, that he mentions there. Ucha japa means loud chanting, everybody hears. One is manda japa. It's also known as upamsu japa, soft chanting. Only I hear. Even my family members out in the next room are not disturbed. And one is manasa japa, which is mental chanting. So the most effective chanting is the one which is the most difficult. And now among bodily karma and verbal chanting and mental chanting, the more difficult is the mental chanting. And therefore in Shastram we say that mental chanting gives you more punyam than verbal chanting, because the more difficult a karma is, the more punyam it should generate, right? So mental chanting, therefore, Ramana says, dhyanam uttama, is as good as dhyanam, right? So if you think, like it's easy to focus your mind, we can have one small thought experiment just now. It takes just 1 minute, okay? So you guys can just sit back, close your eyes, and just listen to what I am saying and try to follow the words. So let's take a few deep breaths, clear your mind of everything. And now you have total freedom. I'm going to ask you to think of a fruit, right? Now, which fruit I'm not going to say, you can think of any fruit you like. In the exercise, there is only one condition. You cannot think of a banana. You can think of every other fruit. So we will now start. Oh, okay. Now, tell me, how many of you had bananas in your thoughts?
Everybody.
So see, if I had not said banana, you would not have thought of a banana. I mean, it's highly unlikely that banana would have come. But since I said banana, your mind caught on to that banana and only bananas. It's just to indicate to you that we always say thoughts are random, but they're not really random. They need something to hold on to. And here, the trigger was my saying banana. Okay, so you could have, some people could have been there, who have been meditating for a long time. And for those people, very much you could have focused without a banana, right? But majority of people would have thought of bananas. So it's a thought experiment to show you that it is very difficult to focus on one particular thought. And frankly, like we start japa, whenever we start japa, we start loudly, right? Any japa, the beginner, for the beginner, japa is always loud. Why is that loud? Because your sound of the voice, of your own voice, it keeps your mind focused. So for starting person, it is always verbalized. The mantra is always verbalized loudly. Now, why is it so difficult? Now, okay, you can think of, just think of a time, the last 10 minutes, or maybe last 20 minutes, or half an hour, wherever, and try to figure out what all thoughts were there in your mind. And you will find, if you are able to make a list of the thoughts, you will find that it was not one thought which occupied your mind. It would have been a series of thoughts. And now if you write all those thoughts down, if you're making an effort, let us say, to really figure out what all you've been thinking of, and you write them all down, and then you look at them the next day, what will you find? That there is no seeming connection between one thought and the other. Right? You will find that thoughts are completely at random. That's why we say thoughts are at random. But it's not really so. There will be some link somewhere. The thing is that thing may be so subconscious that we are not able to see it. Now, in japa, what happened? And therefore, the point being made here is that between my thought at this moment and my thought in the next 1 minute, there may not be really a connection, right? For a person who is sitting and just doing nothing, just thinking, I mean, generally thinking, you will find that over a space of 1 hour, most of thoughts, they are at random, they are on various subjects. You know, somebody would be talking about Himalayas, somebody would be thinking, and the same person, 1 minute he'll be thinking about Himalayas, the other minute he might be thinking of Pizza Hut. So there is no real connection at all. And in japa, what happens is that, what do we ask you to do? You say, take one mantra and you repeat. So let us say it is Om Namo Narayana. So your mind knows that this moment, Om Namo Narayana, that is my thought. The mind knows next moment, Om Namo Narayana. Third moment, Om Namo Narayana. Fourth moment, Om Namo Narayana. So the next thought is known. In the exercise of japa, in advance you know that every thought that you have or you're supposed to have during the japa period, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you know in advance what the thought is. There is no element, there is no chance of being random. It's a different matter that your mind wanders. And during the wandering phase, it will be random thoughts. And again, this is something very interesting. When you are doing, especially those people who have done TTC, who have been sitting every day for 30 days, twice a day, you will know that, especially in the beginning 2 or 3 weeks, when you start to do meditation, you may be very enthusiastic, very focused. For the first 5 minutes or 6 minutes, you may be really seriously meditating. Then suddenly you come back and 20 minutes have gone by. Where was your mind during those 15 minutes? You don't know. It was wandering. And the 25th minute, you say, oh, it's about time to come back because Natarajji is about to end meditation. So you bring it back. Now the point is, you were aware that you were supposed to meditate on Om Namo Narayana. You did for a particular point of time. Had that awareness been constant, your focus would have remained constant. But at some point of time, your mind wandered. And the catch here is that you did not know when the mind wandered. So the purpose of that japa is to ensure, the daily practice is to ensure there is a time when the mind wanders away from your practice of meditation, focusing, concentration. And there is a time when you realize that the mind has wandered. So that gap between your mind actually wandering and your being aware that my mind has wandered, that gap can be anywhere, at least in the half an hour session that we have in the ashram, that gap can be anywhere between 25 and 30 minutes, right? So the idea is to ensure that that gap keeps reducing. So by the end of the course, having done 60 times meditation, at least when the mind wanders, at least in the next 5 or 6 minutes, you are aware the mind has wandered. And therefore, you can bring the mind back to focus, right? That is the purpose of japa. So that predictability, what I should do, what is the advantage? Now apply it to real life, right? When do you feel sorrowful? When do you feel disturbed? What is the connection between being disturbed and what you are thinking about? Is there a connection at all?
The thoughts in the mind.
It is the thought, it's an unpleasant thought in your mind, which is the cause of a disturbance, right? Now, just as you could not keep out the banana thought from the mind, you are not able to keep the unpleasant thought in the mind. It's an uninvited mind, it keeps coming. The advantage of this focus, at least for this half an hour that I am doing my japa, once I perfect the technique, let us say I'm able to do it 30 minutes without too much of disturbance. What is the advantage? For those 30 minutes, you are only allowing Om Namo Narayana into your mind. And by only allowing that thought in your mind, you are keeping every other thought out of your mind, which includes unpleasant and disturbing thoughts. They are kept out of your mind. Right? So if you see the old depictions of the sages, the rishis and all that, you will find that even the greatest of rishis, they always have a japamala in the hand. The japamala is indicative of the fact that my mind is to be constantly occupied with something constructive. I should not allow negative thoughts to come into my mind. So that is the advantage of japa. Okay. Okay. More about japa is that when you do japa, remember it is verbal sound that you are focusing on. That japa, you are focusing on the sound of the mantra. Right? You are not focusing on the meaning. You are focusing on the sound. And it is said that these mantras, since they are handed down by Ishvara himself through the Vedas and all that, these mantras are sacred. And if you recite them often enough, they evoke certain patterns of thought. That is a theory. That the mantra which is recited very regularly with full focus, the original pattern of thought which was present in the mind of the rishi when he was chanting the mantra, you are capable of evoking that same pattern of thought in your mind. And therefore, when we do japa, don't focus on the meaning. You are supposed to focus only on the sound. It is Shabda Pramana. Focus on sound. And you will hear all sort of people saying, in japa, you should focus on the gap between the words. You should focus on the silence between the sounds. All these are different types of advice given by all well-meaning people. Some of them are teachers also. But remember that focusing on the silence between words, that is not japa. That has a different name. That's called nididhyasanam. Okay, that nididhyasanam is to focus on the silence. That silence being the basis for all the words. What is the basis for everything in the universe? Ishvara or Brahman. And therefore the silence between your two words, it's like saying that my words are a building and that building has a foundation and that foundation is a silence. And therefore, if you are focusing on the silence, you are actually focusing on the foundation, which is Brahman or Ishvara. And that process is nididhyasanam, not japa. And therefore, during japa, you should be focusing on the sound. And again, as in any other sadhana, japa can be used for material success or for chitta shuddhi. Of course, the success of the sadhana for material objectives is largely influenced by a prarabdha also. But Shastra says that in the case of the sadhana for chitta shuddhi, the success is more or less guaranteed. Okay. Now, what are the benefits of this japa? It gives you what is known as manojaya, control over the mind, victory over the mind. What are the benefits of that so-called victory over the mind? You will find that the mind is always comfortable with itself. It is satisfied with itself. It doesn't run after external objects for entertainment. Number two is there is serenity in the mind, which we call what? Low FIR. Resistance to disturbances in unfavorable situations. Even if the mind gets disturbed, the frequency of those disturbances are low. The intensity of those disturbances are low. And even if they get disturbed, you will quickly recover your poise of mind. So the low FIR is one of the very important features of manojaya, which is serenity. And because of this, there is spiritual growth. There is a reduction of the likes and dislikes, of the raga dvesha in your mind, which is what we call chitta shuddhi, spiritual purity. Right? We must remember that a strong mind is very comfortable with itself. It doesn't need any external factor to give it entertainment. A person who is always uncomfortable with his own mind is the person who is constantly looking for something external. You put him in a room with no TV, he'll go mad. So if you need the TV all the time, if you're unable to sit in one place and confront your own mind, you need a lot of work. And the material world, all the sense objects in the material world, they are like a crutch for the mind which is weak. Only the weak mind needs them. And a mind which has grown beyond that, which has learned to look at chitta shuddhi, that mind, all sadhana is for chitta shuddhi only. And with chitta shuddhi, what happens is your spiritual desire increases, your yearning for material things in life come down. And because of that, you enter on the spiritual quest. You ask yourself questions. Is this all there is? What is the connection between Jiva, Jagat and Easwaran? That question can never be asked by a mind which is externally oriented. It has to be internal orientation. And once that starts through Karma Yoga, through Upasana Yoga, then you get Sadhana Chatushtayam. If your mind is quietened down, Chitta Shuddhi is there, and your mind is fit for Upasana. So with these, you can see the flow of the text. You start with basic karma, then you come to bodily karma as puja, then you come to verbal karma as one form of chanting, then you come to mental karma as upasana, and upasana, of course, as we all know, it addresses vikshepaha. So these are all the different things which are coming out. And the next verse talks about dhyanam, which is meditation as a tool, as a practice, as a sadhana for all of us. So with this, I'll stop for the day, and any questions we can answer now. As you can see, the entire range of sadhana will be covered. Very briefly, but it's a beautiful text. It covers the whole range of entire spiritual sadhana. It's not sufficient for complete practice. It only gives an overview. And then you have to study the Gita and the Prakarana Granthas, the Vedanta and the Brahma Sutras annually. But these kind of texts are important because they present all the ideas in one place. Unlike Bhagavad Gita, which has ideas scattered all around, or Upanishads, which has ideas scattered all around. In fact, if you have seen, in none of the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita has sadhana chatushtayam been presented as one. All the various factors of the sadhana chatushtayam, viveka, vairagya, all those things, they have not been presented in one chapter or in one verse or even in several chapters. It is only these texts, these Prakarana Granthas, which extract all those things and present it as a subject-wise topic. The advantage of these texts are that they are subject-wise. While Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta, they are not subject-wise. So you have to extract from there. Luckily for us, all the Acharyas have done that. And this is one of those beautiful texts. Yes, Lataji, boliye.
Om Raviji. Now on japa, right? Basically, we can use things like Om Namah Shivaya and things like that.
Yeah.
To go ahead and do the japa. So when we are pausing in between Om and Namah, you said that it is Nididhyasanam. So when
during japa, you don't do the pause. That's my idea. Don't focus on the pause. You can pause, but your mind should be focused on the sound of the japa. Om Namo Narayana. That is the focus. Nididhyasanam, there is no verbal thing at all. It is completely mental, and that is post-study. It is post-study of Vedanta. You can't do
So that
Nididhyasanam at this stage. You have to do it at a stage where at least you are aware of what it is and what it involves. That
okay.
will not come to that. The earliest we'll come to that will be in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. But ideally, it will be after a couple of Upanishads.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we are actually doing this chant or anything, it's only the sound and nothing else. But if a person is pausing, he understands what it means and then he is doing Nididhyasana.
No. Nididhyasanam is not meant for, don't mix up things. Nididhyasanam is puja, it is verbal chanting, and is completely different from Nididhyasanam. This is all part of Karma Upasana. Nididhyasanam is a post-Shravanam Mananam stage. Here you are in Karma and Upasana. I know it is very tempting to rush into those things, but don't.
Not tempting. It's more of trying to understand then what is Nididhyasana. So
the earliest you will really get to that will be chapter 6.
Okay, I need to wait. Thanks.
Yeah. Natraji.
Yeah. Om
Namah Shivaya.
Hi. So you mentioned this issue of like the mind is wandering. So that is like a bit of a rajasic aspect, but equally relevant, and maybe you can give us some practical advice, is the tamasic aspect when the mind gets dull or even falls asleep, which is quite common. Do you have any practical advice? Do you have any practical advice how to overcome that?
Yes, I would say that, like if you look at the Ashtanga Yoga, it talks about all the steps before Dhyanam. So you need to do your pranayama, you need to do your asana practice. If you do all that and then sit down, then it's unlikely that tamas will, interfere too much. But if it is getting tamasic, if you're feeling sleepy, then that is a problem. You have to keep yourself awake. The only way is to bring more rajas into your activity. And that's why in Patanjali talks about asana pranayam before dhyanam.
Right.
Once you get certain amount of rajas is important because you have to stay awake, you have to sit up straight, and you have to meditate.
Yeah, avoid food and all those things.
Avoid tamasic food. And that's why you also have often in a meditation sessions, we start off with Kapalabhati, right?
Yeah.
Couple of rounds. That's the very purpose. Shake the tamas out of your body.
Yeah.
And diet. Very importantly, diet. Tamasic diet is to be avoided because you are what you eat.
Yeah. And I think proper rest also, you must make sure you get enough.
You must make sure you get your 6 hours, 6.5 hours.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Kartika.
Good evening, Raviji. So I'm a little new to the content and I've not been very regular. So I'm not sure if my question is not very appropriate. But the discussion always says that the actions are of a lower level compared to the verbal chanting. But in order to perform an action, you have to basically get all your 5 senses to cooperate with you. And that requires more concentrated effort to also continue with the action, right? So why is
not really, because puja can be very mechanical also. If you invited any priest to your house ever for puja, you will know that it's just mechanical chanting. See, I'm not saying that ideally when you do your puja, all this should be there. Your dhyana slokas are meant for the purpose of visualizing the deity.
Yes.
But if you are just chanting, Aditya Hridayam or something, it might be a mechanical chant. It is in that respect that we are saying that the amount of concentration required is more for verbal chanting than for physical puja, and meditation requires even more, and that is why it is considered superior. Meditation is considered the most superior of all these things, of all the three.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Indiraji.
Acharya. So we were not taught actually, how to do puja, like, what to chant and all. So is there any guidance? Like, I just do probably like morning as soon as we showered, like, the lighting the lamp and then bhakti and all, and then just sit quiet in silence. So what do you recommend for beginners to start with? Like, we have these chanting classes we attend with Tanmayji and then others also.
Yeah.
So what do you want us to do, like when we're doing puja, like chant anything, or what's the...
See, there are two aspects. One is, ideally, when you sit for puja, you you have wash, you have a bath, and then you light the lamp. Offer a small silent prayer to the Lord, and then do at least one chapter of the Gita. And if you are not comfortable with that, if you want to Vishnu Sahasranamam, that is fine also.
Okay.
But do the full thing. And that's why I said Gita, because Gita chapters are shorter than Vishnu Sahasranamam.
Yes,
So
yes,
you will,
yes.
excepting for chapter 2 and chapter 18, you will be able to finish most of the chapters in about 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Okay.
So do that and focus on the sound when you're doing it. Believe me, it'll change your entire mindset. 1 year of that, and you won't be able to do without it.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. That really helps, Acharya. Thank you.
Okay. Okay then. Thank you, everybody. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Acharya.
Om Namah
you.
Shivaya.
Yeah.
Thank you, Acharya.
Thank you.